She knows she's probably never going to eat or drink again. She can cope with that. She cannot cope with severe pain. She's just kept saying, I cannot live in this much pain. She's usually on antibiotics every couple of weeks for a UTI, but every 4 to 6 months, Ella, all of a sudden, within a couple of hours, goes downhill. She'll say to her exact words are, "It's one of those." So I know I need to act quickly. I always phone 111 or get her straight to A&E. I found her collapsed upstairs. I phoned 111, got her straight through. A couple of hours later, we're blue lighting it to hospital. Problems in the ambulance about not knowing where to take her because of her age. As soon as we got there, we got put in a side room. I told them I thought my daughter was extremely ill. We'd had this 5 times. She needed IV fluids, IV antibiotics. I was a couple of hours later, we still hadn't been triaged, still hadn't been seen. I was stopping people left, right, and centre, or anybody that it was very few and far between. Um, and I think it was 1:30 in the morning. A surgical registrar came to fix the cystostomy button, which is a device in her abdomen where she empties a bladder. That had broke with me and the paramedics, so she was soaked from waist down, absolutely drenched in urine. She was vomiting at the top end, barely conscious. I told the surgeon that I thought she was really, really poorly. And he said he's a surgical registrar, he's covering the whole hospital, so can't do anything, but he would pass it on to A&E staff. That was about 1:30 in the morning, and we'd got there at just after 9. She started projectile vomiting. She was barely conscious by this point. I was begging anybody to come and see her, and it was 5 o'clock in the morning before someone came in. No, I'd said I thought she had sepsis numerous times to numerous people. We hadn't seen any doctors up until that point, so I hadn't got a doctor's opinion. We hadn't even seen nurses as such. So we'd been there, 8 hours and not seen anybody, barring the surgical registrar at 1:30 in the morning. He'd said he could tell that she was very unwell, but because he was covering the whole hospital, he would pass it on. But to me, she had sepsis, and I did alert staff to that. It ended up being severe sepsis. Um, we got taken up to a ward that we'd stayed on last year, who knew her quite well. They recognised that that wasn't her usual self. They called for the usual doctor when you get admitted, but it was still a couple of hours later. And then all of a sudden, like within an hour, we were getting told ICU doctors were coming down, that she was extremely poorly. They were doing fluid resuscitation, like what you see in the films where they're holding bags of fluids and pumping it into them. Um, and it was so surreal because, and all I kept saying was, I have told people all night, I am so angry. I have told everybody. She just looked so unwell, so unwell. They'd put her on, I think it's called a PCP pump, so like oxycodone. To start with, it was, if I say, at a manageable level. They'd put her on, so all her usual medication she couldn't have. They'd tried giving her some stuff orally, and she was just vomiting all the time. They ended up putting an NG tube down her nose to stop her being sick. So we couldn't give her any oral medication. So everything was like intravenous at that point. To start with, it was managed, but then as she's been in longer and she has got a severely distended abdomen, she's obviously got all her conditions that she had before she went in, as well as intestinal failure, which is organ failure. Um, Lately managed. We found that, like, when the doctors were originally trying to refer her places, it was she's too old for paediatrics, too young for adults. Some wouldn't accept her till she was 18. Others said because she was nearly 17, they wouldn't accept her. It's there seems to be a massive problem, and all we ever get is we know it's a problem and we're trying to maneuver around it, but this is what we dealt with. So like she's still in a paediatric ward and all her consultants are paediatrics. She's only got one adult consultant, and it's no one has any understanding of her conditions, and that really is the issue. And everybody I brought to the table has been dismissed. Experts in her conditions. I started the GoFundMe to pay for private consultations. He is very well known, very renowned, an expert. And this week he sort of diagnosed her with EDS and mast cell, something I'd said to her consultants about 6 weeks ago that I thought she had. The mast cell, and I got dismissed. The ME Association, I'd been emailing hundreds of people to help, and a doctor called William Weir, he'd phoned her consultant and had a conversation. I couldn't tell you what was said because her consultant never told us. It's no one's ever heard of PEM in there. No one knew about the NICE guidelines. They was treating her for like acute intestinal failure, but Ella has so much more. And even when Ella's screaming out, they're telling her that she needs non-medicinal sort of treatments and psychological help. The pain plan that was given was, we're going to take you down on the oxycodone, and we're offering you, bearing in mind she's got a severely distended abdomen and it's well documented that she won't even let anybody examine it. They offered massage, hot and cold packs, graded movement, play, distraction, mindfulness. So when my daughter's screaming out like she is in the videos, that's what they've offered her. Ella had come to terms with her situation quite a few years ago. Her situation now, the only thing she ever says is, what have I done to deserve this? Why are they being cruel? This should be illegal. That's, and I wouldn't say she's definitely not feeling sorry for herself. She just can't understand why no one will listen. She's come to terms with intestinal failure. She's got friends who are poorlier than her, who manage at home. She knows she's probably never going to eat or drink again. She can cope with that. She cannot cope with severe pain. She's just kept saying, I cannot live in this much pain. And it's pain is the absolute number one problem for Ella, not her conditions or not managing them. It's the fact that people don't believe her. We've seen over 200 doctors over 7 years, and probably only 3 have ever believed her. Obviously, what she's on is not effective. So could we look at a plan to swap? I asked for different types of painkillers. They were on the table for a while, and if I say the pain team would come and say, well, we'll review it in 2 days, and then 2 days, we'll review it in 2 days. And Ella was all this time suffering, crying incessantly on the ward, with so many witnesses that have come forward to speak her truth. And it was, Ella is hypersensitive. CAMS will be the answer to Ella's problem. And she's had enough. She has had enough, and she then started saying, I cannot live like this. If you allow me to suffer in so much pain, I will take my own life. And as soon as she said those words, all medicines were off the table. You can't have this because this can cause suicide. You can't have this. So it was like this. It felt like a get out of jail free card. And then she needed one-to-one supervision by the hospital, which made her 100 times worse because it'd be an agency worker, and it was a total stranger, usually a very well-built man who would just sit at the end of the bed and watch her all night. And that was her mental health support. It just seems to be every single day for the past 6 weeks, there is a battle, and it's battles that don't need to be battles. If someone just listened to what Ella was saying, there are lots of scientific documents to say these conditions cause severe pain. It's not in Ella's head. And I do fear for her life, because there's so many stories where they are now inquests. Just, her pain is real. Her pain is severe. She's not asking for much. It was a different pain plan, someone to listen to her. The bladder stones incident, that was, she screamed for a week. People had walked past for hours on end listening to her scream and walk past and leave her. I ended up having to make a complaint to PALS. Her urologist came, and first of all, they'd said, we're not doing anything because the scan just shows bladder grit. And bearing in mind, she had 2 catheter balloons in her bladder. When I made a complaint, they agreed to take her to surgery. And when she came back from surgery, the surgeon described her bladder as a quarry. He said there were so many stones, we couldn't count them. And I have pictures of these. There was like 40, 50 stones. Her pain was real. She was screaming, and got, that week, pain team come and reduced her pain meds. There needs to be training. There needs to be plans in place. Ella is complex, but there are so many other people that are complex that need help. They need believing. We are going to lose so many more people if they are not sent to the right specialists. Or not every doctor is going to know everything, but when you don't know it, please listen to people that do have an idea. People are going to die, and people are suffering like my daughter. My phone is full of videos of pure screaming and suffering, and it's not right, and it shouldn't be legal. And if she was an animal, she would have been put down. That's just basically the fact. If she was an animal, they would have put her down out of kindness. These people are supposed to be saving lives, not ruining them. She has PTSD from this admission. She wakes up with nightmares. She cries all the time. She is scared stiff of doctors. She has emotional meltdowns when she sees them come on the ward, because she just sees them as people that are going to harm her. That's not right. It's not right at all. We've had to demand that she leaves this hospital and changes to adult care. Ella did not want to do that, but she actually said, Mum, they're going to kill me in here. I need you to do anything. She's shy, she's anxious. The last thing in the world she wanted was a video of herself screaming and crying. She was so desperate. And all she kept saying is, I am going to die in here. I'm optimistic about adults, and I'm just hoping that they can take direction from experts for her other conditions, and just listen to her. Just listen to these people that are complex, because no one knows their bodies better than they do.